We think, I'm back at church and I'm back into my faith and I have that relationship, but it's not true. It wasn't true for me. And I think sometimes something has to happen in your life that God shakes you. He wakes you up. And he did that to me 20 years ago, just about 20 years ago. Some of you people are too young to remember. Some will remember. Some were part of it. It was a tax issue with the NBA where the government came after the NBA referees. Charged people with felonies. We had guys who pled guilty to felonies, 13, 14 guys. I decided not to plead guilty to a felony, and I took him to court. Now, this isn't an audit. This isn't civil. This was from the United States of America. When you look at an indictment, and it says the United States of America versus Steve Javie. And you sit there and you're taken back. I sit there, the first thing I thought of is, take me out of the world and the world will be a safer place. You're right. That kind of stuff. But at the same time, I just felt that I had to fight something that I had to stand up for because I thought it was wrong. If I had to do it over again, even knowing the outcome, which I won. I was found not guilty on all counts. If I had to do it over again, and I knew I won, I wouldn't do it over again. That's how difficult it was. But I would do it over again for two reasons. Love of God and love of my wife. They're the two reasons. My relationship with my Lord and Savior increased. And that's where it began. That personal relationship began with him because during that time, it was the time that I knew I couldn't handle it. We all hear stories. I couldn't handle it. I give it to him. I heard that story. What's a bunch of, right. That was a time I couldn't handle it. And I remember being in church one day and kneeling there and said, Lord, I give this to you right now because I can't handle this. And he took it from me. And I said, whatever you want to happen. I still remember when the jury came in, and I still remember saying to him, if for some reason I'm guilty and there's a reason why I'm going to prison, I'm with you. Whatever you want me to do, it's your will. That's when I started my relationship. Not just going to church, but from 20 years ago, I started going to Mass every morning. Missed it sometimes because here and there, but I try to do the best I can because I can't sustain this world on my own. I used to think I could when I was younger. I'm not strong, man. I'm really weak. But with him, as the coach said, with him we're strong in our weakness. And the other thing, again, like I said, the love of my wife. I found out how much my wife loved me, who was there the whole time. She was there and held me when I cried at 2 a.m. She was there when I held and I cried when the jury verdict came in, not guilty. And when I look back, because when we go through things in life, I truly believe we can't assess it at that time because we're too emotionally involved in it. But when things that are really, really, at the time, think they're tragic in our lives, and some things are very tragic, look at what that's using it for. At that time, he could never imagine when his son passes away, he can never imagine doing what he's doing today. In Jeff's name, God rest his soul. When we go through those things, we can't see it, but then when we look back, God makes everything good. He doesn't want to see Jeff pass away. He doesn't want to see us go through pain and sorrow. He didn't want it that way for us. But what he will do now is the fact that he'll make everything that's bad, he'll make good come out of that. And we have to trust in him. And that's the other thing in the relationship, is that trust in the relationship. Now, I will say that it was tough to trust it sometimes because as I went along later in my career, and as I'm getting closer here now to the end of the presentation, I just wanted to share with you how I got involved in what I'm doing now and how my faith took me to being in formation to become a deacon. After I retired in 2011, I retired because I couldn't run anymore. And as I said, God always has a plan, and now I look back, and if I didn't retire at that time, I probably would not be in my faith journey where I'm at right now because I'd be too old to do it. But what happened was, After I retired, I'm sitting with my wife in church one day, and she hands me this little pamphlet about prayer. I'm sorry, this is right before I retired. I was injured. And she hands me and said about prayer to be specific. And at this time, I didn't know if my career was going to last another year or it was over, whatever it may be. I had a serious knee injury. So I prayed to the Lord, and I said, Lord, if you want me to be specific, I'm going to be specific. I really would like my next year, which would be my 25th year. And if you get me that year, I'm all yours. Whatever you want to do with me, I'm yours. Now, I used to make deals with him when I was younger, when I didn't know him too well. We all know, you're giggling because you all know you all made the same deals. We used to hitchhike when we were younger, all right? Now, hitchhiking, that means you're thumbing a ride, you're not old enough to drive, and somebody picks you up and takes you where you want to go. I can remember many a days. 11:15, curfew's at 11. Oh, man, I'm 10 minutes away from home. Somebody, Lord, please, I promise I'll go to church tomorrow. Have someone pick me up. Inevitably, someone picked me up all the time. And I'd get home next morning. I never kept my end of the bargain. This wasn't that bargain. This wasn't that kind of bargain. This bargain was true because I know he had blessed me in my life and continues to bless me. But I made a living in sports. My father made a living in sports. And it's a means to an end. Yeah, it's great. Okay, you work the finals and all that stuff. And don't get me wrong. Very, very, very exciting. But you know what? Nothing has been more satisfying than these last 6 years I'm in formation. Learning about my faith, learning about my Savior, growing in my relationship with Christ has been the most incredible thing in my life. I was so pumped to get up here today and so happy that Pat asked me and Darren asked me to be with Ed and everybody here. And, it was incredible. So what happened in prayer is I was submitting to his will. Now, little did I know that he was going to call me to become a deacon because I had no idea what a deacon did in a Catholic church, Protestant church, anything. I had no idea. But we're sitting one day, and here's how it came about. There's a quick story, and then I'll end with this. We're sitting there, and there's this world-renowned Catholic speaker by the name of Jeff Cavins came to our parish, and he was speaking to us. And he was speaking to us about how God talks to each and every one of us. And I'm sitting there, look at this guy. Might talk to you, buddy. You don't talk to me. I says, are you kidding me? So as he's going on, he told us a story. He says, well, let me tell you how God talks to you. Now, he's from Minnesota. Unfortunately, the Eagles kicked their butt in the playoffs last year. Sorry, Pat. And that's right. Did I say they won the Super Bowl? We're in Dallas? Okay, yeah, okay. Right. I forgot to mention that in the beginning. But he was from Minnesota, and he's a big Vikings fan. He just got back from a two-week trip. And all he wants to do after Mass is to go back home, sit in his recliner, turn that Vikings game on. That's all he wants to do. Changed his clothes, sits down, he's got his sweatpants on, boom, puts on the Vikings game. And he says, I get this thought in my mind. And it says, go back up to church. And he's like, no way. Game's going on, maybe first quarter's over. He can't get that thought out of his mind. So he says to his wife, he tells his wife what's going on. She goes, Jeff, you better go back up to church because that's going to bug you and bug you and bug you until you go back up to church. Goes back up to church. Changes and everything, gets out of the recliner, goes back up to church, opens the front door of the church. The pastor's in the front of the church talking with somebody. He looks up and he sees Jeff and he goes, oh, and there he is right now. Jeff was the head of this one ministry this guy was inquiring about, and he wanted to meet Jeff Cavins, and he had that thought. He says, that is how God talks to you, putting little thoughts in your mind. Just little whispers, little thoughts. And at that moment, the word deacon came into my mind. And I couldn't get it out of my mind for the rest of the afternoon. I said to Mary Ellen, I have to go see the pastor. I got to tell him. I said, this is crazy. I said, is this the answer to the prayers? I said, this is nuts. In retirement, I was thinking about Florida and golf and 3 months in warm weather and so on. I wasn't thinking about church. My relationship was good with God, but he's like, this good? And he was calling me? Me? The one who knows everything about me? Oh my gosh. So I got to my pastor, great guy, and I sit down, told him the story. He kind of smirked. He goes, hey, how about that? And I says, yeah, how about that? And I says, but I got a problem. He goes, you got a problem? What's your problem? He says, I like beer and I like to play golf. And he says, well, do you embarrass yourself? I said, on the golf course I do, But he said, and he gave me the greatest advice ever. When you get a call like that, you feel you have a call like that, just to put one foot in front of the other. Boom, boom, and see where it goes. Believe me, I am so far out of my comfort zone right now, it is beyond belief. Because I could never get up here a little while ago to speak about my faith, speak about Jesus Christ, our Savior, who has everything. I am so far out of my comfort zone. But as a deacon friend of mine said, he said, take that first step out of your comfort zone. He'll meet you there. He always does. He says, and then you'll take that next step. And he'll do it again. He says, believe me, you'll never turn around and walk back. He'll meet you where you are. And no matter where we are in our faith journey, wherever you are, I challenge each and every one of you, in the next week or two, do something that takes you in your faith. Do something that takes you out of your comfort zone. Something that you'd sit there and go, I don't know. I don't know what it may be. For me, at times before, it was, to say grace in public. To say grace. All right, with your family. Maybe that's something out of your comfort zone. Maybe it's joining a ministry that you think you're being called to, but you didn't have the guts to in your church. Maybe, just maybe, it's going to church every Sunday. Or better yet, maybe tomorrow morning, it's taking that cup of coffee and finding your prayer chair. I thank you very much. I think if you do something like this, it'll be so fulfilling. I thank you for listening today. Again, thank you so much for coming and allowing me to be a part of it. Thank you very much.